Hello, hello, and welcome to the Tip of the Iceberg podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. I'm your host, Nick Brlansky, joined as always by Nick Horwat here on the Tip of the Iceberg. The Penguins have now won 3 straight games, their second winning streak of 3 or more games in the past 2 weeks, and we have a lot to talk about today. Of course, we can talk a little bit about Penguins Blue Jackets because it was realistically the same exact game story as the first time these two teams met up. Blue Jackets pushed hard early, got out to a lead in the first period. The cream rose to the top, and the better team, the Pittsburgh Penguins, came out with the 2 points in regulation. But there are some stories, as I said last week, that are just bigger than hockey. And right now, any story that comes out about Kris Letang improving his condition, getting back onto the ice, which is obviously secondary, but being healthy enough to get back onto the ice is the main story. It seems like he is progressing much faster, at least much faster than I expected, Horwat, and I assume you'd feel the same way.
Yeah, I know that everyone said from the jump that it was a far less severe stroke than the last one, but I still don't think anybody expected something like this. I mean, to the point where it's been over a week since we all found out and not even moved to LTIR. I brought that up the first time whenever we first discussed this. Like, he wasn't moved off of the active roster. Like, he's taking up a roster space. So clearly, at that with this amount of time that has gone past, it's safe to say he's not gonna get dropped on there, which, if you think about it, can only mean one of two things. Either one, we're managing this very poorly, or two, he's gonna be back soon, because would it not be just the smart decision to drop him on LTIR, especially if he's going to miss that amount of time, and free up $6.1 million in cap space in case, three players get sick and another one is injured? So
Well,
you can make a call up or two to fill that line money wise. I mean, yeah, the roster size is still um, close to the top, but you still have at least a little bit of flexibility. I don't
yeah, and
know.
to me, there is a third option there. Not just, oh, we're screwing this up, or he's coming back very soon. It could be the very real possibility that they have no idea when he'll be ready to come back. But they were on a long 5 game homestand. They do go on the road on Friday to Buffalo, but then right back at home for a lot of games to end the month of December. So there's really no need to drop him to LTIR until you know that he's going to miss that amount of time. So it might not be that they expect him back, but they might not be sure whether or not he'll come back in that allotted 10 games, 24 days that he would have to miss automatically if he was put on the LTIR. They could make it retroactive
Yeah.
to the first game that he actually missed, which would obviously shorten the amount of time that he's on there. But I do think it's a very real possibility that they looked around and they said, listen, we have our 6 defensemen. We're not playing shorthanded. And unless we are going on a long road trip or unless somebody goes down, gets sick, so we almost saw it on Tuesday, goes down, gets sick, gets injured. We need to fill that spot. There's no need for us to make a rash decision. There's no need for us to put him on LTIR if we don't, if we have the cap space and the roster to fill out an actual game lineup. So I think that's a very real possibility as well.
Yeah, it is. I just feel like whenever you are in that situation of we don't know,
Mm-hmm.
well, when wouldn't the smart move to play it safe? I mean, I don't. It's an interesting, wild concept that I really, like I said, the first time we discussed it, I was shocked he wasn't put on then. And I
Yeah.
get it, but it's well, we got plenty of home games coming up. You're right about that
Yes.
part of it. We go to Buffalo, but then immediately the next day we're back. And then what? We only have 3 more away games following that for the rest of the calendar year.
And they're all in the Metro Division.
Yeah, we have a lot of Metro games coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we play Florida in there and obviously Buffalo twice, but it's a lot of Metro.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, though, it's I'm still just surprised that we're getting off topic. Though the point of here is that Letang is skating again, sort of.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't know to the capacity and if it is team regimented, because that is one thing Sullivan has kind of been saying since the beginning, that he's skating, yeah, but we haven't cleared anything. He's kind
Mm-hmm.
of just doing this for the own peace of mind. But then that video popped out and it was him doing drills, ladies and
Mm-hmm.
gentlemen, doing drills. That's a little bit more, I'm not going to say team regimented still, despite the fact that he was skating with Ryan Paling and Ty Hennis, but a little more conducive, a little more regimented. They're doing drills. It's that looks like a step forward to me. That looks like he's
Yeah.
doing a little more than staying in shape.
Yeah, and we can obviously only draw comparisons to what we know in the hockey world. And when you see somebody practicing with Ty Hennis before practices and doing drills and stuff like that, that is the first step of on ice return to a full lineup spot. The next step in that normal process, which this might not be, like Mike Sullivan has said, Ron Hextall has said, we are at the mercy of the medical professionals who are monitoring Kris's situation, which is 100% the way to go to it. So this might not be the way that his actual return is going to go, but usually you see that practice individual with Ty Hennis, and then you see them join practice with the rest of the team in a non-contact capacity. Then they get full contact for a couple of practices, and then they return to a game. We don't know if that's what it is, but looking back on what we know, that's the normal way that these things goes. That's the sequence of things. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But you mentioned it. Not only was that just a couple days ago, that was Tuesday before the morning skate. 8 days separated from having a stroke. And this man is on the ice, not just on the ice doing a twirl like he was 2 days after. He's on the ice doing extensive drills, which, listen, he had a stroke. That's a heart condition. And he's out there doing a little bit more intensive drills already. That's only a positive sign for Kris Letang and his health.
It is. It's more than just keeping up the keeping in the right mindset, like which was part of the early twirls or skates in the following days. This is a little bit more than that. This is getting reps in. This is getting a practice in on your own. It's really good for his progress and also phenomenal for the team's morale in general. The fact that he's able to be around the team and still crack jokes with them and be in the locker room every day. It is more than just him taking reps and working his way back. He's remaining a member of this team. And that's huge for not just Kris, but the team in general and all the fans that are supporting every aspect of this whole thing.
It was funny to me that I don't remember if it was Monday after practice or Tuesday after the game, but P.O. Joseph had a comment when he was asked about filling in or stepping up for Kris Letang and how the defense is done in Letang's absence. And he said, quote, "There's no point in trying to be the hero or trying to save the world. We just got to do what we can and step up to the level that we can." And it's funny that he said that because it seems like Kris Letang is having a Herculean, superhuman experience on his return here from a stroke. So definitely positive signs. We love to see it. And the one thing I want to ask, and listen, it's almost a moot point to try to speculate as to when we'll see him back in the Penguins lineup, but it feels like too good of a story for him to return for the Winter Classic, doesn't it?
Yeah, feels too good, and it doesn't feel too soon too. I mean, we are, like we say, we're it's the health of the human first. But genuinely, I mean, I don't know what a normal recovery process is for a stroke. I don't remember how long it was for the last one. I keep forgetting how long it was. What did we say? 2 months?
I thought I saw that somewhere, but I have to double check because somebody else said 8, and that's that much of a discrepancy means that somebody was wrong.
I mean, I think he came back that season.
So I would imagine it was 2.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with 2 for now. Do you remember what year it was? I could probably just pull it.
It was in 2014. But while you look that up, I'll give my point on this Winter Classic return. That would be exactly 5 weeks separated from his stroke. And I know that seems like, hey, that's a quick turnaround to go from a medical emergency to playing on national television in the way that Kris Letang plays as well. Because the way that he plays is not conducive to somebody with a heart condition. But the man is an absolute freak of nature. He's an animal. He is one of the most biggest fitness freaks in the National Hockey League. And with all this being said, there should be no rush to get him back. I do not want to see him back until we know he is 100% ready to go, 100% not going to, re-injure himself or nothing's going to flare up. He's not going to face a setback, because this is something you have to really, you got to handle with kid gloves. You got to really take it very seriously. But that feels like almost the perfect scenario. And especially for Kris, you know how he's feeling going into this. I mean,
Mhm.
he's what, 34, 35 years old. How many more opportunities is he going to get to play in an outdoor game, let alone the Winter Classic at Fenway Park? You know it's going to mean a lot to him to be out there for that game if he can, in the capacity as a Penguins defenseman and not just as an injured member of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, and it was 2 months. I mean, and he had it in. I can tell you his game sequence. I don't have the exact dates. He last played in 2014. It was the late January, and then returned before the regular season ended in early April.
Yeah.
But which, by the way, in the last 4 games of the regular season, he had. Last 3 games of the regular season, he had 4 points. Freaking nature.
Oh, man.
So if that's the case, we would expect it to be sooner than 2 months. 2 months in a week, whatever this exact layout may have been.
9 weeks, probably.
About, I mean, if you want to get technical, it was January. I'm on the wrong dates here. January 27th was the last game to February 9th. So, give or take some weeks in there.
To February 9th? You mean May 9th?
April 9th, yes.
Okay, I was about to say he missed a week.
Sorry, yeah, you know what I mean here.
Yeah, all good. But yeah, no, that's it. It's the end of January to the beginning of April. That's not very long.
No,
Not long at all. Like that is literally like 9 weeks. And like I mentioned, it would be exactly 5 weeks if this go around if he returned for the Winter Classic.
Yeah, so you would assume it's going to be quicker than that time period, and if it happens to fall into there, sure, you got your HBO special. You got your Disney movie. It's all right there for you.
Yeah, you're 30 for 30 on ESPN. You got to bring it with the times, Horwat. ESPN owns the NHL now, their television rights. But
hasn't 30 for 30 kind of fallen off?
It has, because there's so many of them at this point. It used to be
30
only select stories, but now it's a little bit more open to the public. But we're getting on a tangent. Let's talk a little bit about Sidney Crosby, because he is on an absolute tear right now. One of the top 5 in the NHL in scoring. Now, nobody's going to catch Connor McDavid. He's at 52 points at this point. But more impressive is Sidney Crosby's recent run in his last 10 games. 8 goals, 10 assists for 18 points. He has 5 multi-point games in the last 10, and he has 2 multi-goal games in the last 10. What do you make of Sidney Crosby's incredible performance so far this season, and more specifically in these last 10?
It's been something to watch. He's doing everything he can to help this team win. And that's always what he has done, is doing everything he can to help his team win. But at the same time, well, you're doing it by being one of the best players in the league. You know, yeah, you don't want to talk about how you are as a player, but damn it, you're standing out like a sore thumb right now just because of how phenomenal this has looked. What did you say it was in the last 10? Because that's gross.
He had 8 goals, almost a goal per game. Definitely has an assist per game. 8 goals, 10 assists, 18 points.
Yeah, 18 points. And there's multiple multi-point games, 2 4-point games in there.
5 multi-point games. Half the time he's scoring at least 2 points. He's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's quite incredible, especially when you look at his age. I mean, among the top 10 point scorers in the league right now, he and Erik Karlsson are the only ones over 30. Karlsson's only 32, I think. Sid's 35, man. You get the old man contract at the age of 35.
You do. They're literally called the 35-plus contracts.
Yeah, this is a little different now. Sure, do everything you can to help the team win, but by God, you're crushing this league right now. And then, yeah, I get it's not Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, or even Jason Robertson numbers, but it's still just so incredible to watch happen in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's another reason that I really, really am impressed with it, and I think there's a reason that we've seen him kind of go to another level, and that's because he's playing consistently with Rickard Rakell and Jake Guentzel on that line. Stat here from Jake D8771 on Twitter says the Penguins are now 11-1-2 with Guentzel, Crosby, and Rakell as their top line trio. It's an absolute just embarrassment of riches for the Penguins, because below that is one of the best underlying numbers lines in the National Hockey League this season in Zucker, Malkin, and Rust. So their top 6, when healthy and when clicking on all cylinders, which they have been for the past at least week, and Crosby has been for the past 10 games, this is the best top six in the National Hockey League, and I'm 100% comfortable in that statement.
It's a bold statement. There's some good top sixes, and there's some homerism top sixes out there, but I think this is a very, very good group of guys that can get it done. I keep saying, like, they flip flop back and forth between who is the better line at any given night, but the fact that they're able to do that speaks for itself too. It's so much production coming from those two lines that, yeah, Sid needs no introduction, but at the same time, even when the second line isn't scoring, they're driving play. They are maintaining possession. Malkin may still be doing just a little too much every so often, but they're creating chances. They're generating. Every time Jason Zucker misses, he looks to the rafters because he should have had it because he had such an open chance. Everyone out of those six are getting open chances. Brian Rust seems to be coming around after a long stretch of nothingness. And that's really good for the second line, especially. And then obviously the first line needs no more introduction than they have. That record speaks for itself. They're a successful team when those three are A, together, and B, working well together. And then the second line is being better than a Robin to the Batman.
Yeah, they are. And Sidney Crosby is, of course, the leader of all of them. He's the conductor of this train, the conductor of this team, and right now he is playing Mozart's finest symphonies on the ice for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's on pace for 47 goals, 63 assists, which would give him 110 points. That finish, if he stays on that pace, would be the second most goals and points in his career. The career of one of the best hockey players in the history of the NHL. And at the age of 35, he's just going out there and playing like he's 18. Absolutely ridiculous. But I mean, the one question I do want to ask you, Horwat, before we cut the break, is there anything you can think of to point to as to why he is going off in the way that he is this season?
Yeah, that concept that he's always changing parts of his game, I think, is a big one. Mike Sullivan said that his game is ever evolving, so he's trying to do what he can to keep up with this league that is getting younger and faster around him. Maybe he doesn't have the same speed anymore, but he's now getting into more just shooting the puck because he has a natural talent for scoring goals that he just hasn't utilized that often. I mean, we've seen him go as low as 16 goals a couple seasons ago and half a year, but still. It's just the way he's always evolving his game into, I don't even know. It's hard to really put into it, but it's the way that he's just always changing his game to keep up with everything. And because he is Sidney Crosby, one of God's most gifted athletes, he can just do that. He can just do that. He can just make himself better in certain areas. And while he still is phenomenal defensively minded, I haven't seen too much of that really. I mean, his plus minus has been kind of down a little bit. He's taken he's eaten a lot of minus games. But that hasn't been a lot of the focus, I think. I think his focus has turned to goal scoring and going with a bit of an Edmonton Oiler outlook of just outscoring your problems, doing what you can to win that way.
Yeah. You mentioned he is one of the most talented players naturally in the National Hockey League, but I have two reasons why I'm going to point to in this. Again, this is our opinion. Like, you never know, but I feel that these two reasons also go into why he has 35 points in 26 games. His work ethic is obviously unmatched, but we saw him and the drive that he had on day 3 and 4 when we were together for Penguins camp, diving in drills on the second rink when it was a 2-on-1 drill. He's diving on the ice, trying to make sure he gets goals. What we looked at each other, we said, did somebody want to tell him this is like day 2 of training camp? Maybe you should pump the brakes, old man. But we're sitting there making fun of, his dad was in attendance, and we're like, oh, his dad's coming up to check on his kid 17 years, 18 years into the league. Maybe because he knew something's up. Maybe not because he knew, Crosby is driven that much more this season for a reason. And I think one of those reasons is, do you think Sid didn't hear the old commentary over the summer when people were talking about Gino and Letang and probably thinking, oh, I'm the same age as them, so am I too old now? Like, if I was a free agent, would that be in the news? And you never know how these guys think. I mean, it could be the Michael the Michael Jordan-esque thing of anything to give an edge. But I think he heard that old commentary over the summer as well and said, you know what? We're all going to be great, but I'm going to show you personally how great I can be at the age of 35. So either way, it's been an absolutely phenomenal run from the captain.
Yeah, and all of it boils down to just his pure talent that he's going to do what he can to win and tack on just the pure skill. And I had another, damn it, I lost it. I had another point that I just it vanished. But anyway, yeah, he's been a lot of fun to watch. And the way I forget, I think it was Malkin that said this team is older, but they're not old.
Yeah,
someone said that. I forget it was him, Malkin, or yeah, it's that's the way they can look at it. Like, yeah, they're older, but they're not old. They still have these youthful legs in them. Whenever Malkin started off the season extremely hot, we saw that, yeah, he's older, but he's playing real young again. And now here we are, Sidney Crosby, 26 games into the season, 35 points. Yeah, he's 35, but he's not playing like it. So age is just a mindset for this team. Mindset for this team.
Age is but a number, Horwat, and time is but a number as well. And we are running over in this first segment. So we're going to take a quick break, but when we return, talk about the power play because it's starting to find its rhythm for the Pittsburgh Penguins. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. Before we get into the Pittsburgh Penguins power play, which has been clicking on all cylinders the past couple of games, we do want to mention one piece of news that came out on Wednesday. Penguins prospect Sam Poulin has stepped away from the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Baby Penguins of the AHL. Due to personal reasons, he's taking a personal leave of absence, returning home to Quebec to continue working on and off the ice on his progression. But we just want to wish Sam, of course, all the best and hope that he returns, whether that be at the NHL level or the AHL level, fully whole and ready to go, and hope that this leave of absence really helps him.
Yeah, and don't try and dig into why he's leaving or what it's for.
No.
Like Hextall said in the release, just respect the kid's privacy. Number one, let's remember he is a kid. We don't know anything about it. We're not even going to speculate if it's a mental health thing. We're not going to speculate if it is a family thing. Doing none of that. We're just going to say you respect a kid's privacy in this situation, and hope he gets better and hope he's able to return, like you said, whole and return, doing what he loves.
So with that, let's move over and talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins power play, because Tuesday might have been their finest performance as a unit. And talking about the top unit this entire season. I mean, I know you're playing the Columbus Blue Jackets, who, let's not get this mixed up, they have a really bad penalty kill unit. But what I think is good is they changed things up, and you can see that they're trying to do things a little bit differently. Sullivan said to you on, I don't remember when it was, but after the Saturday game against St. Louis, that he wanted to build off the 2 power play goals scored by the second power play unit. Well, the Penguins did go 1 for 5 against Columbus, which is okay. They scored, but I think the thing you have to look at is every single opportunity they had several opportunities and got a lot of shots on goal.
Yeah, they had plenty of opportunities. It didn't look horrendous. Was kind of the best part of it, is that it didn't look like they were just blowing up chances like they had done so often. So every so often you'd be watching the first unit out there, you'd look away for a second, I don't know, check a text, look back up. Oh, the opponent's now on a breakaway. What happened? Because it just had this tendency to just fall apart and overpass and pass into legs. That didn't happen as much against Columbus. Again, yeah, Columbus, bad team. 22nd in the league in penalty kill, but still NHL players. Still NHL caliber players that you need to play around. And they did that. They were taking advantage of the right opportunities. And I think you put it beautifully in your Penguins to Go, which, by the way, go listen to Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. switch up the way the concept works. Put
Mhm.
Sidney Crosby down low, move Gensel to the side, and go from there. And that is exactly how that one goal was scored. Now it's a start. It was 1 for 5, which still isn't ideal, but at least they look competent, and that is the first stepping stone, because I think we've lost the idea of switching up the personnel, because that doesn't seem to work either.
Mhm. Yeah, switching up the personnel can only do so much if you don't change the actual scheme, especially when the personnel you're switching is somebody that's not really too involved in the scheme to begin with. So I saw a lot of scheme changes
Mm-hmm.
on Tuesday, and I liked what I saw, like you mentioned, and I texted it to you anyway. Whenever I put out that first Penguins to go about Jake Gensel, and go back and listen to it, I said he needs to get out of the net front from time to time, and they need to utilize his playmaking abilities. They did that on Tuesday. He passes it to Crosby down low, who I also said that's where he should be playing a little bit. And the puck goes in the net. And trust me, I was grinning from ear to ear when I saw that. But something else I mentioned on that show, and I won't give away the whole show. Go back and listen to it. It's only 10 minutes long. Is they were not just switching spots for those two guys. They were consistently moving throughout the zone. Malkin and Petrie were switching. Raquel was going to the opposite end of the ice. Crosby was going to the net front, then going to the left side. Gensel was in front like he's always been, but he's then been on the left wing. He was then taking shots on the right wing. That is the reason the Penguins needed to switch the scheme, is because they were becoming too predictable. And it doesn't matter what players you have on the ice. It doesn't matter how talented the players you have on the ice. If you're predictable, a lot of penalty kills in the National Hockey League are going to be able to shut you down. And that's where the Pittsburgh Penguins were at. Moving like that, thinking, okay, we don't know who's going to be where because they're switching everything up. That's going to get people guessing, and that's what's going to open up opportunities for your uber skilled guys like Evgeny Malkin to get open shots. Jake Gensel had a one-timer that I thought was labeled for the top corner, but he just couldn't get it close enough to the post. And then you see that it pays off with the Crosby goal, with a beautiful pass from Jake Gensel to Crosby on the back door. And the other thing I want to mention is the one issue that I really hated was them trying to be the Harlem Globetrotters on the power play and making all these Royal Road passes that led to those breakaways.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were playing up high already, and they were trying to pass it. If they're not patty cake passing it back and forth, wasting time, they were trying to make these ridiculous, Lemieux Gretzky-esque passes on every single power play opportunity. And when you do stuff like that, especially if you take any amount of steam off the puck, you're going to give the other team a chance to take the puck and go the other way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you can't try and force those passes. That's one thing that you can all pass phenomenally well. You just can't force it like that. You have to have the right opportunity. If you see a hole and you're able to cross that pass the entire way the length of the ice, go for it, because it's going to look great if it connects. But if it doesn't, you understand that that's a high danger chance, and that's one thing that killed the Penguins for a long time. That was those high danger chances. They talked a couple of times about how they were taking too many high danger opportunities and not succeeding on them. Mm-hmm. So like I said, if it works out, great. You look like a phenomenal team, which you are. Just act like it sometimes.
Yeah. Now, interestingly enough to me, all three of the goals, of course, they tacked on the empty netter, which was taking on a mind of its own for Teddy Bluger to be a flying Latvian trying to get back into his own net. But all three goals for the Pittsburgh Penguins against the Blue Jackets came from the same place that Kasperi Kapanen scored his entire hat trick on Saturday, in the blue paint. Crosby falling down right outside the blue paint. Second one, he was basically in the blue paint, hence the reason they reviewed it for goaltender interference. And the first one was Brian Rust, same thing. Goaltender sprawling because you're pressuring, you're bringing a lot to the center of the ice, you're bringing a lot to the net front, and that's paying off for the Pittsburgh Penguins in spades. They'll have to keep that going against a Buffalo Sabres team that, listen, they're high, then they're low. Now it's Tage Thompson time, and I'm hoping he ran out of gas on Wednesday whenever he blew up the Columbus Blue Jackets for 5 goals and 6 points in a 9-3 victory. Man, the Blue Jackets are just they're having a rough go of it, and we'll talk about more of that after this break when we get into our Metropolitan Division rankings 3.0 for the month of December. We waited on it a little bit just because there were other things to talk about earlier in the month, but we will get to those power rankings of the Metropolitan Division right after this break. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast. I'm Nick Brlansky. That's Nick Horwat. And like Horwat mentioned in the last segment, make sure you check out our new segments, Penguins to Go, coming out every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you know why that's great, Horwat, for our listeners? If you wanted more content, if you wanted more up-to-date content, you will now have a new episode on the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast feed, anywhere you get your podcast from Monday through Friday. To me, if I want content, that's what I want. Monday through Friday, an episode every day. And those will come out early every weekday, probably around 7:30 or 8 o'clock, depending on how fast my computer processes the download.
But they'll also be available all day. And as a matter of fact, I listened to both of them yesterday. Mm-hmm. So, a day later, that's all available at any time. Give it a listen. It's all great stuff. And, bringing up great points on so many different things.
First episode was about how the Penguins were wasting Jake Gensel's potential. Go check that out from Tuesday. And then Wednesday's episode, something needs to happen with Jeff Carter. But you can go listen to those. There's 10 minutes each. Just go spend a couple minutes or maybe even on your drive to work, which is why we put them out at that time. But let's get into our Metropolitan Division rankings 3.0. Horwat, number 8 and number 7, I feel like are consensus. It's just a matter of who you want to put where. I have the Columbus Blue Jackets at the bottom again. I believe I've put them at the bottom for all of my power rankings. Cannot remember at this moment in time. I meant to go back and check it out, but I have the Columbus Blue Jackets at number 8. They're injured and they're very, very young. I mean, they had 2 players making their NHL debut against the Pittsburgh Penguins on Tuesday. It just seems like they're outmatched every single night.
Yeah, and it's not even that they're injured. They're players that are injured and out for the season.
Yeah.
It's not like it's I stubbed his toe. He's gonna miss a couple of games. I couldn't think of anything else.
That's more a basketball injury than a hockey injury, but I'll allow it.
Fine. He broke his toe. He's gonna be out for a couple of games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these guys are out for the year. Yeah. They're big names. And for what it's worth, the one name, I can't remember which one it is now, the one that wasn't Bernie, making his NHL debut against the Penguins, I believe is supposed to be a good player one day anyway.
Kirill Marchenko, I believe, is his name.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to be good one day. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm confusing him with a different name. But they could have a very good future. I mean, especially if they keep this up and end up in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. You just never know. But at this point, that's exactly where they are. 18 points is tied for second worst in the NHL.
I can't remember if the Columbus Blue Jackets have ever picked first overall, but if they have Connor Bedard and Johnny Gaudreau playing on the same hockey team, that'll be a lot of fun to watch. Not a lot of fun to go up against if you're the Penguins.
No, and I can't remember if they have selected first overall ever either. Rick Nash, I believe, is he's up there, but look at that, Rick Nash first overall pick.
Okay, there you go.
That's probably their only one. Yes.
I was about to say that has to be their only first overall pick. But I know they have Jack Johnson, number 3 overall?
Yeah, yes, I forget what year that was. But there is also a number.
Crosby's year, 2005.
Oh, then Jack Johnson was drafted by Carolina.
Was he?
Yes.
I don't remember.
Pretty sure it wasn't Columbus.
Oh well,
because he played in LA first, actually, Jack Johnson. So anyway, there's also a number of top 10 picks in Columbus's history. So
they've also only ever won one playoff series. So they pick high, but they've only ever gotten the first overall pick once. But enough about the Columbus Blue Jackets. Number 7, I have the Philadelphia Flyers. The only reason I have them above Columbus is because they're a little bit healthier, because they're still dealing with injuries as well. And at least they have Carter Hart, who's one of the best goaltenders in the league this season.
Yeah, I put them above Columbus too, just because they at least look like they can have some competency if things pull together a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's still not going to be a phenomenal year, but
no,
Carter Hart, like you said, one of the best goalies in the league, except for when he plays us. I mean, and for what it's worth, this Flyers team can still, for at least another week or two, fall back on, hey, did you see that start we had? Why do you think we're not in the basement right now?
Yeah,
there's still a little something to be had there.
Yeah, they're walking down the steps to the basement. They're not quite there yet, but they're certainly on their way. Horwat, who do you have at number 6 and number 5?
Number 6 and number 5. I have 6, the New York Rangers, just because, boy, they look down bad. I'm not saying they're, going to miss the playoffs, but at this very moment, they just look down rotten. I mean, losing to the very not so good Chicago Blackhawks. They're not even trying to be good Chicago Blackhawks. And then blowing a 3-0 lead to, I get the Oilers are a really good team, but you had a 3-0 lead.
Mhm.
You had a 3-0 lead, and then you just got toyed with. So I got the Rangers below the Washington Capitals as my next two. And the Capitals, because they're not supposed to be great. They finally hit 12 wins and 12 losses on top of a couple of – they finally hit a 500 record is what I'm getting at. But at least they're the Washington Capitals, right? And Ovechkin's still chasing something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I have the Washington Capitals at number 6, actually. I have them ranked number 6. It seems like the whole team's identity now is, always goal chase. And right now he's chasing Gordie Howe, who had 801. I think Ovechkin hit 2 empty netters last night, which puts him at 795 or 796. So, I mean, cool for Ovechkin. He's still having a pretty decent season. They're also dealing with a lot of injuries, which is why a lot of these teams in the basement of the Metro are struggling so much. But looking at this team, even when they do get healthy, it just feels like they're past their prime. And the additions that they made, losing Connor Brown was huge because I loved that addition. Darcy Kemper has been fine. Lindgren has been fine in net. But if you look at the goalies that they gave up on, I mean, Samsonov is looking good in Toronto. And as we'll talk about in a little bit, Vitek Vanacek has just popped off for the New Jersey Devils. So certainly not a recipe for greatness for the Washington Capitals. So I have them at number 6. And at number 5, a team that you haven't mentioned yet, I have the New York Islanders. I'm not ready to trust this team yet. They've obviously outperformed in my expectations to start the season. They're certainly not falling off the face of the earth because of the loss of Barry Trotz over the offseason. And they still do have Ilya Sorokin, who is one of the most underrated and best goaltenders in the National Hockey League. Not to mention Matt Barzal finally started to score a couple of goals. He has 3 goals on the year, but 25 assists. There was a belief that he could go point per game without any goals, which would have been amazing. But I digress on that point. I think there's a possibility of me bumping them up a lot more, but I just need to see it on a more consistent basis.
And that's kind of why I had them up at 4. Like, yeah, they're outperforming what people would have expected, but they at least are looking good. And where they sit right now is a good, healthy spot to be in. Mm-hmm. As I kind of look at and compare the rest here, my top 4 lays out as the standings are. So have that for what you will.
Yeah, before we get into the top 3 here, I'll say my number 4, which is the New York Rangers. And you mentioned, yes, they've looked a lot worse than expectations, but the expectations were made because of them going the whole way to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, which might have been a little overperforming, but that's what people do in May and June. And I thought they did it really well. I still like the way this team is constructed on paper. I think they did lose a couple big pieces when you look at the offseason moves. But I do like the addition of Vinny Trocheck. I do. It hasn't been what they're paying him for, but it certainly hasn't been a disaster. And I just like this team on the ice, and I still believe that they're better than what they're showing. I mean, they went out last night, and they blew the doors off the Vegas Golden Knights on the road, which is an impressive victory to say itself. But this team still goes as Igor Shesterkin goes. He just hasn't been outer worldly like he was last season, but there's still a chance that he gets back to that, and the Rangers get right back to being one of the top teams in the Metro.
Yeah, I mean, let's say Igor Shesterkin picks it up, and they got something going there. I mean, I kept putting him down because, I said they looked down bad. They're losing to the Blackhawks. They're blowing 3-0 leads. I didn't even mention the fact that their own goalie was saying how bad he was playing. Mm-hmm. When your own goalie, especially like you said, whenever your team is riding and dying on the performance of the goalie, whenever the goalie says he himself is not playing well and needs to be better, that doesn't, show how confident the team is. That they all understand they need to be better. So it's not a great spot for them right now. I mean, they're sitting outside of the playoffs, I believe, right now. So they got some things to work on.
They do. They got a couple things to work on, and you mentioned that your top 3 goes as the standings goes, which means you have the Pittsburgh Penguins ranked number 3 right now, and the Carolina Hurricanes at number 2. Why do you have the Hurricanes over the Penguins specifically?
Because they beat the Penguins.
That's
kind of the main reason for it, the main crux of it. I haven't seen too much about the Hurricanes this year other than, I mean, they have a very good record right now, 14-6-6, 34 points. Yeah, we're in a dogfight with them rankings-wise. But they have the step up in A, the overall rankings, and B, the one time that I really paid attention to them and noticed them, they beat us. And, say what you will about that overtime, but they got the upper hand. I mean,
Mhm.
plus that's an overtime we deserve to lose if all three players on the ice stop playing.
That's true.
Anyway, but yeah, so I think for what it's worth right now, I get it's really, I mean, it's close. Both teams, as of this recording, played 26 games, both with 14 wins. They just have those 2 extra overtime losses to flip it into their favor. It's going to be close, and I mean, maybe they could be like a 2A and a 2B in these power rankings, but I mean, man, I just also don't want to pull the Devils out of number 1 yet, just because they're still so shocking.
Yeah, we'll get to the Devils in a second, and obviously it's December 8th, so me even saying the word playoffs is ridiculous. But man, what would a playoff series between the Penguins and the Hurricanes look like? That would be absolutely phenomenal hockey.
Yeah, and we know for a fact it would not look like 2009.
No,
we can say.
it would not. The Penguins would not be victimizing Pyotr Kochetkov like they did Cam Ward in that series.
No, not at all.
But I actually do have the Penguins above the Carolina Hurricanes. Usually, I rank the Penguins lower than you do. I usually have a little bit more of a negative opinion of the Pittsburgh Penguins. But when I look at the Hurricanes before I get into the Pens, the Hurricanes are just they are what they are. They're slow and steady, just under the radar. Just go out there. We're going to pick up our wins. We're going to have players that are doing miraculous things, but nobody's going to pay attention to them for some reason. And then we're just going to float under the radar until we finish the season with either first or second seed in the Metropolitan Division. They are a very well-coached team under Rod Brindamore, and they are a very, very skilled team that plays extremely well at 5-on-5. I think they're one of the best teams in the National Hockey League. But right now, I do have the Penguins ahead of them, even though the Hurricanes beat the Pens a couple of days ago. I do think the Penguins, for long stretches of that game, outplayed the Hurricanes. It was at PPG Paints Arena, so that plays a small factor. But when I look at the Penguins, with their special teams coming along, I mean, their penalty kill has been probably the best in the National Hockey League over this past stretch. The power play, the way it looked on Tuesday, if they can keep a little bit of that momentum going. Sidney Crosby, we talked about this episode, ultra determined, ultra competitive, and that first line and top six as a whole looking, bonkers. And then Tristan Jarry rounding into Vezina form. I like the Penguins and where they're at right now, as opposed to the Carolina Hurricanes, who have kind of muddled around at 500 for the past couple of weeks. I think the Penguins right now are the team to beat between these two. But the team to beat in the Metropolitan Division, and you mentioned them a couple of minutes ago, man, are the New Jersey Devils just an absolute wagon. Horwat, what are your thoughts on the boys from Jersey?
So again, they're another one that I don't notice too often ever since they lost their streak. I don't notice them too often, but then you just look at all of the numbers and you go, oh, they're 10-3-1 at home all season. Oh, they're 11-1 on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And their last 10, they are 8-1-1, just like the Penguins. How? Who was on this team that is doing this?
Well, a lot of young players that are, man, like Hughes and Heishier on another level this year.
Like, are they hitting the stride that they were supposed to hit last year?
Yes.
Okay.
Because you know why? Because they have goaltending.
Hey.
Because they have Vitek Vanacek that they stole right from under the nose of the Washington Capitals. They didn't steal him from under their nose. They went dumpster diving and picked up Vitek Vanacek, and oh, look at that! I found a golden egg in the dumpster. Oh well. Sorry about it, Washington.
Just laughing at the numbers. A 922 save percentage, a 2.1 goals against, pair of shutouts with 12-2-1 record. And not to mention Mackenzie Blackwood is now back up on that team. 4-2.
That is a high profile backup. Like, that is a good backup.
Yeah. It's a young goaltending core too. I mean, Vanacek's 27, Blackwood's 26. Looks like they have a prospect that played a couple. He played, wait, what? Akira, what? This 22-year-old call-up is a perfect 5-0?
I have to look into that because I have no idea. I was thinking you were going to say somebody like Nico Dawes.
Am I reading that right? Akira Schmid, 22 years old, 5 games played, 4 starts, is a perfect 5-0 with a 949 and a 1.42.
What?
Excuse me? Okay, these guys are just getting goaltending.
That defense, like, let's not take anything away from Ryan Graves, Dougie Hamilton, and the boys. Like, Damon Severson has turned into a grade A defenseman on a third pairing, and John Marino,
Of course, John Marino. Forgot about
John
him.
Marino is turned into what we all expected him to turn into after his rookie season. So we're gonna have to get Neil Villapiano of the Devil's State of Mind podcast on here to talk about that rookie goaltender and just what is happening in the Garden State.
We play the Devils at home to close out the calendar year. That might
Is
be
that on New Year's Eve?
the 30th.
I love the New Year's Eve games.
At like 2:00.
No, usually, like, for some reason, it always seems like it's against the Detroit Red Wings.
Oh,
at,
yeah.
like, normal 7:00, and nobody's thinking about it.
Yeah. But because you know what's even funnier is I pulled up his hockey reference here that Akira Schmid. So first of all, he's born in the year 2000. Now we all feel old. Secondly, last season he played in 6 games and was a perfect 0-4.
Hey, rounding out to 500.
Wow. This is I want to hear more on this guy. I mean, yeah, they're getting great goaltending from the guys they should be in their 1 and 2. But they're 3. If this is the prospect of the future, oh boy.
Yeah, and somebody else I do want to mention. I don't want to go throughout this entire talk without mentioning him because he's been just as impressive as Jack Hughes, just as impressive as Nico Hischier. Shout out to Jesper Bratt, man.
Yeah.
Dude is having a year, and people will not talk about him because he plays with a guy like, Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier, for example. But, Jesper Bratt, he is, to make it easy for Penguins fans that don't know, he is the Devils' Jake Gensel. That's what he is.
Yeah, he is.
So
it's such a young team. They have 3 players over the age of 30, and one of them is Andre Palat, who's been injured. Oh boy.
Yeah, and Tatar's also been, we could go on for days about the players that have just been standing up and standing out for the New Jersey Devils, but we're going to end this episode. I'll give you my power rankings 8 through 1, then Horwat's going to give his, and then we're going to get out of here. I have Columbus at 8, Philadelphia at 7, Washington at 6, the 2 New York teams, the Islanders at 5, and the Rangers at 4. Then I have the Hurricanes, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the New Jersey Devils. Horwat, what you got 8 through 1?
All right, my handy dandy little notebook here. At 8, Columbus. 7, Philadelphia. 6, the New York Rangers. Sorry, they're down bad. 5, the Washington Capitals. 4, the New York Islanders. And the rounding out the top 3 is as it stands. I believe it's the top 4 as it stands, but hey, 3 Pittsburgh, 2 Carolina, and 1 the New Jersey Devils. I couldn't think of Devils in Spanish, so just the Devils.
The New Jersey. Why can't I? Why it's very
right? It's easy too.
You know what?
Anyway.
It is very easy, and I'm just blanking on it. That's I need to go because I'm just gonna think about it the entire time. But that's gonna do it for this episode of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast. Me and Horwat will together be back on Monday, but make sure you check out the feed every single weekday for a new episode, whether it's Tip of the Ice-Burgh or Penguins to Go. I'll be back tomorrow talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins trading block on Penguins to Go tomorrow morning. But thank you so much for listening to this episode. Make sure you download, make sure you subscribe, make sure you check out the website InsideThePenguins.com, where Horwat is doing a holy hell lot of writing for the website. So check out everything. Thank you guys so much. And also, we're giving away a Teddy Bluger jersey. We tried it once. The individual didn't come forward. Make sure you subscribe. Inside the Penguins on YouTube. Screenshot that. Put it under the tweet that is on Inside the Penguins on Twitter, and you're entered for a chance to win a Teddy Bluger jersey. That ends Monday, I believe. Whenever they play the Devils, that's when it ends. Or sorry, the Stars. That's when it ends. I gotta go. I'm still trying to think of Devils in Spanish, man. You got me all messed up. We'll see you guys next week. Have a great weekend, Pens fans.